It's real. It's real. You know the deal. You know the deal. Come on.
Hey, it's Shanté.
And I'm Natalie, and welcome to What's the Deal, a podcast powered by the Norfus firm. At the Norfus firm, we solve people problems and have the great pleasure of working with employers all around the world on HR and DEI initiatives. Hi.
Hello.
How's it going? How's it going?
I think that hello kind of just told you how it's going.
You're just hanging in there.
Hanging on.
So I'm excited about today's episode because I think anytime we get the opportunity to have a guest who can highlight, marginalized voice, like we're excited about that, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks out here doing incredible work, including our guest, on really helping people sort of see themselves and how they translate that into their work. Mm-hmm. So our guest today is Amira Alvarez, and Amira is the owner of The Unstoppable Woman and a podcast called The Unstoppable Woman. And Amira's work focuses on high-performing women and how they can sort of have the life they want and be successful in their work life. And so we'll have Amira talk a little bit in a second about what exquisite life means. But the reason why we were excited to talk to Amira is that and the work that we do, we deal with lack of representation of women. That's the conversation almost with every single one of our clients around, well, how do we get more women at the top? So we love shared language. Mm-hmm. So the term that I'm going to start with so that we're all on the same page is, because we actually got asked this question yesterday in the focus group. What is representation? So representation looks at whether a company has a proportionate number of people from different backgrounds, such as women or people from marginalized groups at all levels of the organization. Right. So this can, when we're looking at representation, we can be looking at race, we can be looking at gender, we can be looking at sexual orientation. And the goal here is not just do you have women in your workplace, not just do you have men in your workplace, or do you have Black people in your workplace? Mm-hmm. Are they represented throughout the organization? Right. And factually, from a data perspective, most companies do well with bringing in women and marginalized folks at lower levels. Right. But they do not do well with keeping them and preparing them for higher level positions. Right. So that becomes relevant as I'm going to turn over to Amira, because if you are a woman who has reached high heights in your organization, you're a VP or above, you're running business units, you're responsible for P&Ls, it can be really lonely when you don't see a lot of other women or you don't have a lot of other women colleagues. And so I don't know that those experiences ever really get highlighted, I think in part because of the socioeconomic piece. Well, you're up there, you got there, you're making a lot of money. Why do you care? Why should we care? Right. Because every person deserves to have their personhood seen. So Amira, welcome. And if you could, tell us what exquisite life means for folks who are not familiar with it.
Thanks so much for having me here, both of you. It's a great pleasure, and I'm super excited to have this conversation. It's a really important conversation to have, and I'm grateful for the opportunity and the context that you've framed up. So I'm going to read the definition that I wrote out that's on our website, and it's a two-part definition. And one or both of these definitions may resonate with the audience, even if they are not women, okay? I wrote this for women, but I think it's applicable to most high-performing individuals who are really going for more in their life. So definition number one, exquisite life. A state where striving for greatness and living with ease are not at odds, demonstrating that success and inner peace are not mutually exclusive, but rather experiences that amplify each other and reveal who we truly are. So we could spend the entire time talking about that if you want, because I think that's rich and deep. And definition number two is the intentional creation of a rich life that not only looks good on the outside, but feels good on the inside. A life of congruency filled with enchantment and beauty, purpose and truth, where each day one feels profoundly alive, in love with life, and entirely whole.
The thing that comes up for me for both of those is that this sense of integration. So instead of being separate and having to live separate lives or separate experiences, it's how do we integrate this to really to level it up so that everything is working together in the most beneficial way.
Right. And that you don't have to choose one thing over the other thing. Right. I think when you think about the idea that you can be successful and peaceful, right? Like those things they're not necessarily at odds unless you let them be at odds. I think is sort of a beautiful, when Amira was reading it, I was thinking about your word right now. So right now, Shanté's word is equanimity. Yeah. She's striving to reach equanimity. And so when I was listening to that, I was thinking about, it's because it's this balance, right? It's this, that's the piece.
Yeah. But it's not just a balance of like, you're literally teetering back and forth trying to balance yourself, right? No, it's more of a balance where you're even, you're cool. And there's a contentment there as well, which to me is a big part of that. It's being content with it. And even to the point where you experience joy.
Yeah.
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 I think a key word here is wholeness. Also, because the integration, the congruency, the wholeness, instead of chasing one thing, I need work-life balance, right? I need to chase my career over here. And then that gets out of balance, right? I'm stressed out. I'm too far into that. I need to go then work on my personal life and self-care and all these things that we know that are very important for us. Both of these things are incredibly important to us. And we teeter-totter, right, between the two. And I'm advocating for a different way of being in this world, which is being whole in all aspects of your life. And yet that requires a different intentionality in terms of who you're being at work. I think a lot of women, especially high-performing women, when you reach a certain level, you're wearing a mask. Nobody knows who you really are, right? That is not the full expression of who you are. That is not the truth of who you are. It may be who you think you are because you've been doing it for so long, right? You might be in love with that persona, but there's an aspect of yourself that is not being seen and doesn't feel whole. And it will at those fractured moments, those places where the lines break open under stress, come up and like shoot through like a volcano and force you to look at it. And then you do the teeter-totter thing, which is what I think the world has been teaching us. And I think that's what you're saying, Shanté. It's not about that flipping back and forth. That in and of itself is not, it's not the truth of who we want to be. It's not wholeness. It's not coming from a place of wholeness. It's coming from a place of lack. Oh, this is good. And now I'm lacking this. This is good. Now I'm lacking this. And that's contradictory to, like why we want the things we want and desire what we want in our life and go after the goals that we have.
So with that framing, Amira, when you think about what led you to start the Unstoppable Woman, what problems were you hoping to help your clients solve? Like what were you seeing that you were trying to help folks sort of solve for?
Absolutely. So I think high-performing women, let's raise our hands. Like I learned from my own experience here that I knew how, I very quickly assessed how to be successful in this world, how to, grow my career, build my business. I had a corporate career and then I ran my own business and I did very, very well, right? I understood what it took to do that. And I had no sense that was cutting off a whole part of me. But I think that age kind of plays into this a little bit as I reached my late 40s and 50s, that I started to think, is this all there is, right? Like I know that I can reach the next metric. I can set the next goal. And I had past tense, the testosterone, the literal, like the hormonal foundation in order to go hard every single day to reach those goals. And I did it, and it was enlivening and thrilling, but it wasn't after I started to use up that testosterone. And this is real, a real thing. I didn't have the same desire to go hard. And I had to start thinking about, well, what was that in me? And I frame it up in a very, there's different energies, essences within us. There's a masculine, which is all about very single focused goal achievement, structured work. And there's an essence in us that's feminine, which is about flow and receptivity and allowing and receiving. And both sexes in life, male, female, everyone in between, however you identify, has both of these essences in us, and we can prioritize one or the other. And I realized I was all in my masculine, 98%, right? And what it did was it made me really good at achieving in the way that as society says we need to achieve, like building the big goals. And this is what I saw in my clients as well. We're really good at it. Like, we'll reach the top echelons. But at some point, we're like, there's a whole aspect of ourselves that's no longer being nourished, sustained, expressed. And yet we don't know. We're terrified of, how do I keep my level of success? I love the financial rewards. I love the impact I'm making. I love the status. I love the job I get to do because I'm at this level. How do we get to keep the rewards of this kind of achievement without the same modus operandi? Like, how do we actually do that from a place of wholeness that is a full expression of who we are? And I saw that time and time and time again with my private clients who use me as a trusted advisor, as a sounding board, as a mentor. And they kept asking this question. I know that I can't keep doing it this way. I'm running out of the fuel for that. And how do I do it differently? So that was where this Exquisite Life, the company's called The Unstoppable Woman. And yet I was seeing women stop. And that is from the frame up that you shared at the beginning of this conversation. That's a loss for organizations, right? When women don't have the fuel to do their work in this world, you lose so much. You lose the creativity, you lose the perspective, you lose the solutions, you lose the great assets that you've poured into. And I think that's a big deal for those who have made it to the CEO level. And I think it's also a big deal for those who you mentioned, haven't been promoted. And I think that the lesson there is that women are saying, I don't want to sacrifice the wholeness of who I am in order to get to that next level.
So there's a couple things that are really important, and I really appreciate you saying, because I think there's a lot of aspects to an employee experience, right? That I think people tend to just gloss over. And one of which is this idea that every individual has both masculine and feminine energy, right? I think that's so important. And we've had, when we were in North Carolina, actually after we had dinner with Amira, we ended up having the conversation around what do people think feminine means and what do people think masculine means? And I would love for you to share the ways in which you described it. But the reason why I want to highlight that as something that we need to be thoughtful of is that everybody has testosterone and can use it to go hard. Like, so a woman who's really deemed to be aggressive is exerting the similar sort of energy that a man who's just assertive is raising. And I think, again, a biological truth is that we all have the ability to flex feminine traits or masculine traits. And so when you're looking at the whole person, it's trying to avoid the things of, gosh, that Natalie is so aggressive. She's so direct. She's so this. And as we always say, pause. Would you say that about a man? If a man showed up exactly and said all the things that I'm saying exactly the way I'm saying them, would you think he's aggressive, or you think, wow, he's logical and cogent and to the point and we know what we need to do? So there's that. But do you mind sharing just how you talked about feminine and masculine?
Oh, I mean, I related it more like to the elements. So, the feminine being more like that water type energy, which again can be destructive, right? When applied a certain way, but it's very much in flow,
and very powerful,
and extremely powerful in many forms, right? Like, and it can like different states, right? And then the masculine energy is more of that like fire, that thing that's going to get things started, the thing that's going to like ignite and get things going. And so, to your point, you have that both. And I love that Amira highlighted that it's like a balance that you strike, and that at some point you got it, the scale shifts. Like you just don't have it anymore. And I love so many things about what Amira said. There's the internal aspect of this. So, right, there's the hormonal part of it. That's kind of like the manifestation of that energy. But then there's the part of it where when you're talking about the representation and as you go up through that ladder, could a part of that be because to the women, we ain't got it. We don't have that extra fuel in that way in order to really push through to those higher levels, or we choose not to continue to stoke that fire, right? Because it doesn't help us, it doesn't serve us. And so it's interesting. I would love for us to really be able to, at some point, maybe not now, because I'm sure there are other points that Amira wants to make.
Do it now, babe.
I would love to understand, like, what shifts need to be, what do we need to make in terms of the systemic shifts or the way employers or organizations look at women. Because when you think about it, women who are going to ascend at certain points, most women who are ascending at that level are in their 40s, 50s, right? That's when that starts to happen, maybe late 30s. And so in addition to rising the ladder, your hormones are changing. Yeah. Right? Like, we're just starting to get into the menopause conversation in the workplace now. Like, it's just really starting to happen. So it's like, what needs to shift within organizations or systems in order to allow that, so that women can continue to grow and move up in these organizations and honor that these things are actually happening within themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love this conversation. Okay. So I think that there needs to be a conversation around burnout. You'll hear that term a lot. And for a long time, I thought, what is this about? Like, burnout. It's like so encapsulated, and it's like they're flipping a switch. What's happening? And this was before I had recognition of this. So years and years ago. And I think that is something really important for employers to listen to, because I think we can dismiss it as, I'm tired of working. Okay. Like, I'm just, I'm tired of the stress. When in fact, it's deeper than that. I am tired of not having energy for my life anymore. I'm tired of sacrificing all the energy that I have for this role. I'm done with that level of sacrifice. And I think that the hormone conversation, although I'm not a specialist on hormones, and that would be something for people to go, research on their own. What I do know is that we're all born with a certain level of testosterone. Men are biologically born with like 10 times as much testosterone as women. We'll use it up at the same rate, but we get to a place where we don't have any more. Okay. And then when you use our backup supply in our adrenals, okay, we'll push through because we're as committed, we're as goal driven, right? And then it's gone. Okay. And that's where we have to have a conversation around this. So how would we do it differently? Okay. So if I want to add to the nature elements conversation about the masculine and feminine. One analogy that I love, I did not make this up, but I'm using it because it's so good, is that a waterfall is like the masculine and the feminine coming together. So the masculine would be the rocks or the structure of the waterfall. Without that, the water has no place to flow through. It becomes a flat lake pond with no movement, no energy to it. The feminine aspect of the waterfall is the water. Without the feminine, all you have is a bunch of rocks. You don't have this life force of the waterfall and the energy moving through it. So you need both. So this is not an argument of saying throw out one for the other. Okay. This is about how do you become the waterfall, right? How do you become as an individual, someone that holds structure for herself and allows her creativity and her energy to flow? As an organization, as a company, and this is getting back to your question now, it is how do you become a structure for the energy that your individual contributors flow through? How do you become a structure that allows ideas to manifest? Because we all know that bottom line of corporations, right? Making money comes through great ideas. Okay. The execution of that. If you don't have any great ideas flowing through, if you don't have that energy coming into the organization, you don't have the outcomes that you want. So that was a lot of lead up. I think the answer is if right now we can say, okay, our organizations err on the side of being more masculine, more single focused, more structured, very defined. And that's how we're all encouraged to show up and love showing up, right? I would say that women love showing up this way. Ambitious women, it's not that we don't like it. We like it so much that we live it. Okay. So then, but we then stop the flow of energy and we become all in the masculine. Now we can push really hard and that structure is really solid, but we don't have that energy running through it. So I think that the way to create this is more spaciousness. This is so inefficient from a logic top down kind of perspective. But in order for us to allow flow to happen is we have to have less structure rather than more structure. Okay. We have to allow for time every day that's not scheduled. Okay. When I was going hard, I had a schedule that started at 7 a.m, right? And went to 7 p.m. and it was packed. I was maximizing no downtime, right? I was maximizing every moment and everything was filled with meetings and it was decision after decision after decision. And it felt enlivening until it wasn't, right? So more spaciousness on the daily, but also more offsites, more just time down, more vacations. This is something I did not understand. I was like, what is this concept of vacations? I didn't know what to do on vacations because my brain was always on. So I think there's creating it as a structure. And I know that there are organizations that are doing this and also encouraging it in individuals, setting them, being models for that, because I don't think we know how to do that when we're so in it. Okay.
So the thing that comes up big time from what Amira is describing kind of goes back to what we talk about a lot of what kind of workplace culture do you want?
Yeah.
So I think if you take that step back, and again, when we think about culture, a workplace culture, it's really the way in which you do things, right? So when you look at a definition of workplace culture, it's agreed norms on how this place operates. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you're looking at this in a bigger context of, hey, we have representation goals, we want to keep women, we want to move them through, as an example of an underrepresented group, it goes back to what are the behaviors that you have established as norms to be successful in your organization, which we ask about a lot. Like when we're doing focus groups, you know, we're saying what types of behaviors get rewarded here, what are the unspoken rules of promotion, right? So that we're really getting at what gets rewarded here, and is that the most effective way to get to what you need to get to? Because we talk about spaciousness a lot. Yeah. If you are in meetings for even 6 hours a day, there is just no way your brain has space to be creative or be thoughtful about other ways to do things, because you are literally just trying to make it through. All right, I have 3 more meetings. Okay, 2 more meetings. Okay, 1 more meeting. And then our last meeting yesterday went over until almost 6 o'clock, right? So you're like, crap, we've been meeting since like 9 this morning. You're tired, you're done. Like almost everybody, man, woman, non-binary, everybody we talk to is in a similar space in that regard. Right. But I think because of the fact that most organizations do reward masculine behaviors, right? And that everything needs to be very logical, structured, fast, now, hard, blah, 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 drive it, you know, then it's like you lose out on the ability to maintain it longer, because it's just not sustainable. Again, it doesn't matter your gender. It's not sustainable to always be going hard. Right. And an example of this came up yesterday, doing an investigation where the company itself was purchased by a private equity company. And having worked for a company that was purchased by a private equity company, it's a very different workplace culture than most others, right? Because the drivers day to day relate heavily to numbers, right? So they relate heavily to how we're making money back and extra money. And everything about that scenario of PE is dependent on people behaving a certain way. Sure. And I think that's where it becomes such a hard thing, because most people are like, I don't want to drive that hard. I've worked here for 30 years. Like, I already know what I'm doing, right? That's something that I hear. Other things are like, oh my God, we have these values where you're supposed to bring your own positivity, but like everybody's acting crazy and not treating me right, right? So I think it's sort of this tension that we're seeing of like trying to squeeze round peg into a square hole, where it's like, you say you care about people, you say you have these values, you say there should be these types of things, but your motivators don't tell that same story.
Yeah. As you're talking, for what's coming up for me is really around, to Amira's point, the structure and the system. Like, how do we advocate then for this shift? Right? Like, what does that look like in terms of language that we use, in terms of behavior? So the culture piece is really, really big there, and what needs to happen, and who really kicks that, who really kicks that off? Like, who's the one who's going to champion that part if they come at it from that angle? Because it's a really interesting angle. Yeah. Right? Of trying to create space for women, because you are really cognizant of the shifts that are happening within them internally, as well as the organizational changes that need to happen. So who, because we say it all the time that the people who are marginalized, or the people that are disenfranchised, it's really hard for us to actually have to champion this too. So we need help from everybody. I'm going to say, you did like a softball. You know the answer. Some men who have power too need to get in this situation and be thoughtful. Great. Like, if this is what you want. Talk to him. Then, yeah. Okay, well, I do talk to him. Oh, Amira. Sorry, I'm like, wait, hold on. I had a moment there. Amira, if you're talking to a male CEO, based on what you've just described to us, like, what's your message? Like, what are you saying to this man who's saying, Amira, I can't get the women to stay. They're so smart, they're so great, but they won't stay, or they're unhappy. What is your response to that CEO?
I think whether that CEO is a male or a female, okay, man or woman, non-binary, I think we're all indoctrinated, okay? I think we're all indoctrinated to, this is how we succeed. This is how we create more, right, in business. And so we have to find different models for how to create more that makes sense to us, that we can go, oh yeah, that. So a few examples outside of corporations. Einstein had his brilliant aha, right? Not when he was grinding it out with pen to paper. Okay. He had it like dreaming, walking. Okay. It was not in a frickin' meeting. It was not in front of a computer. Okay. And look at how that changed the world. Same thing. I remember being in college. I went to UC Berkeley, and I was in a science and the power of science and technology class. Like, it was about these things and philosophical and the impact of it. And one of the folks that came as a guest lecturer was the man, I can't remember his name right now, but he came up with how to sequence the genome, okay, DNA, in a way that allowed the whole genome to be mapped, okay? And it was this technology that he had been grinding on for a while. And then he said, I freaking let it go. And this one's a little bit edgy, right? He like took LSD or something. I forget what it was, but he went completely not in the sort of structured way. He had to do something to get out of it. And he woke up with this frickin' brainstorm that solved everything and changed the world. Now, I'm not advocating for dropping drugs or anything like that, right?
We're sure you have a drug-free workplace policy to our listeners. Yes. Enforce it early and often.
Yeah. So I'm not advocating that, but I am advocating that these major breakthroughs in the world came from not being in an overly structured place. Okay. So if you want a breakthrough in your business, right? If you want people who are going to come up with creative solutions to everyday problems, okay? To the everyday problems that your business is creating, how are you going to build in the spaciousness that's required? And that is a revolutionary concept. Okay. Though I'd be interested in your take on some of the companies that have started to do that. Like Netflix has a unlimited vacation policy. And as long as you get your work done, you can take as much vacation as you want. And, what are your thoughts on that? That seems to have paid off pretty well, but I don't know the internal
it goes back to workplace culture.
It does.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when you think about, which is why I love this conversation, I just want to acknowledge one thing that Amira has said that I think is a great little nugget to take away. Think about where you got your best ideas, right? If you stop and you think, this is the thing that broke it open. There is something very meditative about the shower. I have amazing ideas in the shower. I do not take meetings in the shower, folks. So these ideas come at a time that's relatively unstructured. Yeah. So if you're thinking about this idea of, we do want to be able to do more, to Amira's point, and we have to think about what that more, a different way to get at more. How have you come up with more in the past? I would venture to guess that a lot of leaders, again, doesn't matter your gender expression, you will say to yourself, it was not in a meeting, right? We talked about something in the meeting and I was at dinner and I was like, oh, or I saw someone doing something that was similar. I'm like, oh, right.
Or I was out on a run, or I was at the,
because a lot of those indicate the need to have time to process information, pause, and let it flow together on what it means. So Amira, I appreciate that. And I just encourage folks to be thoughtful of, when you get to these great ideas, how did they come to be? Because I think that also helps to create that throughput or that line to how do you do more without it being one hard way of getting there. Now, on this idea of other ways in which you create spaciousness, which can be, there's companies who have the unlimited PTOs, companies who give every other Friday off, companies who have no meetings on certain days. All of those things can be really effective interventions if they are actually woven into the company's culture. And I say that to say a lot of these policies end up being written on paper, but you never see a senior leader actually take unlimited vacation. Right. You never see a senior leader adhere to no meetings on a certain day. You never see a senior leader be off on the day that everybody's off. That if you are trying to make that be the vibe, you have to do it too. Absolutely. Because people have to know that it's actually accepted and not just something that's not lip service to an issue. I know you're not going to want to know this, but it's time. So I'm so sorry. We always want to go forever and ever, but we brand ourselves as being practical. I love this because we were about
to go to a metaphysical place.
I know. I'm like, ooh, I know, but we have to stay true. But Amira, I cannot thank you enough for coming today and highlighting perspectives that get lost in the sauce. for me to just do a quick recap here on our takeaways, it's lonely at the top for anyone, but certainly if you're one of only. Mm-hmm. When it comes to women in particular, have the same drive, desire to be ambitious and happy as others. And there are elements of nature that are part of men and women and folks who are non-binary. And so be thoughtful of that when you're looking at women. Don't decide for them what they need. Talk to them about what they need, and be thoughtful of other ways to get to success. And in thinking about being thoughtful of other ways to get to success, think about how you've gotten to success and some of the best things that you've done and how that can help create something new.
And I think for me, it's the create space.
Create the space, but for real, y'all, if you're going to give unlimited PTO, leaders, at least just go dark on the online. Make it seem like you're taking time off. Set the example so people feel like they can do this because they need it. And as a lot of our recent episodes are getting at, there's a lot of workplace conflict. People are really falling apart on a day-to-day basis. So outside of just this idea of how do we get more women at the top, how do you just treat people as whole people, to use Amira's term? Yes. So we'll be back with lots of other stuff. As I'm going to take Shanté's point of find us on the internet, because she's going to tell you can find us on the internet. I mean, we know that, but the norfusfirm.com. We're on all socials. Like and subscribe, and tell us what you want us to talk about, and we're ready to do it.
So thank you, Amira.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the conversation.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, and leadership. That's the deal when you know what you're dealing with. Learn